welcome back to Well, That's Interesting, the Gifts That Keep On Giving edition. Today is episode 217. We need to talk about these grave-robbing badgers and these fish that can count. My friends, as this holiday season begins to creep up on us like an old man in a tight red-hot suit, I thought, you know what? Why not cover stories whose details break and enter your heart, leaving you with a warm, yet also creepy feeling, like an old man in a tight red-hot suit. That's how we celebrate on a podcast like this, and good news, I think I found those stories. In the first half of the show, it'll be my honor to introduce to you a creature we've never featured in the 4 years of this show, the badger. It'll be an absolute first, but this story, well, it'll definitely make up for lost time. My friends, on one fine day, about 3 years ago, 88-year-old Ann Mathers called her daughter, quote, in hysterics after discovering a part of a human skull in her garden. Following her daughter's advice, Ann then called the police to report the cranium lying there amongst her flowers, growing against the backdrop of the picture-perfect historic town of Dudley, England. Police acted accordingly, cordoning off the property and treated the discovery as a crime scene. But, according to Ann's daughter, Lorraine Lloyd, who told the BBC, quote, "We didn't realize how much worse the situation was going to get." End quote. Oh yes, the number of body parts seemingly appearing out of thin air in Ann's garden multiplied as the days carried on. Although it wasn't the best look for Ann, she wasn't a suspect because the bones' appearance and decay were clearly from decades, even centuries prior. With a little sleuthing, police didn't have to go very far to find the culprit. My friends, we know who's behind this. We know where they live, we know where they work, we know what they look like, we even know their behavior. And there's nothing that can be done. They're protected by law. We will meet the very large community of animals not only wreaking havoc in Dudley, but other areas of the UK. We will get into the setbacks of a town trying to defend itself and its cemetery, and boy howdy, this story is 2 years in the making, and it's still unfolding. I can't wait to dig into it with you, and no pun intended. I'm sorry. Then after the break, an animal we've covered a bunch of times on this show, and that's for good reason. Researchers love how much we see ourselves in them. I'm not talking about great apes. I'm talking about zebrafish. Yeah, a fish, but not any old fish. Way the fuck back in episode 157, Fish May Sense Each Other's Fear and Glitter is in Our Water and That's Not Good, we learned that researchers discovered the same hormone and brain mechanism responsible for human empathy inside zebrafish. Not only that, when their genome was sequenced back in 2013, a whopping 84% of genes associated with human disease were found to have a zebrafish counterpart. And their muscles, blood, kidney, and eyes share features with our human systems. Now, in the study we're about to dive into, we now know that they can fucking count too. My friends, due to the unique connection zebrafish have with people, it's no surprise that Tyrone Lusson-Ceccato at the University of Ferrara, Italy, nailed it, who wanted to find out if the ability to count is genetic, began tests on these fish. We will get into the ingenious experiment Tyrone set up. We will get into the fascinating results which show, yeah, zebrafish could totally count the number of gifts for them left under the tree. Or tank. Anyway, we will get into what this means when it comes to our own understanding of the human brain. In the meantime, hi, I'm Jill Chacha, and if this is your first time listening, welcome to the flock, my infinite business goose. If you are a longtime member of the flock, I have an update, and it definitely goes with the theme of gifts that keep on giving. Back several lifetimes ago, in June, We spoke about why people hear their names being called in the woods and the sounds coming from underneath Pando in episode 195. Over in a little place called Fish Lake National Forest, we learned about Pando, a not-so-little single organism that's about 106 acres in size, consisting of at least 47,000 aspen trees. Well, they look like trees to us, but they're actually all genetically identical stems, connected underground by a single massive root system. Pando is actually a single tree that is its own forest, weighing in at an estimated 13.2 million pounds. It's grown to such a size because it's been cloning itself. It's been replenishing those individual stems every 100 years or so for the past 9,000 to 12,000 years. Up to 12,000 years. Well, that was the estimate at the time of the recording, episode 195. That it's somewhere between 9 to 12,000 years, when receding glaciers made it possible for plant life to take hold. Well, guess what? My many-limbed business goose, a new study just dropped by William Radcliffe, an evolutionary biologist. Let's try that again. William Radcliffe, an evolutionary biologist at the Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta, and Rosen Pineau, a plant evolutionary geneticist at the University of Chicago in Illinois. They did some new clickety-clack calculations. And they first began by collecting samples of roots, barks, and leaves and branches from across Pando, as well as from other unrelated quaking aspen trees. They then extracted DNA samples to compare and contrast. And here's the thing, they also entered Pando's genetic data into a theoretical model that plots an organism's evolutionary lineage. They used AI to do all the mathy maths to mathematically figure out, based on Pando's DNA and mutation rate, how old Pando just may be. And what did they find? Drum roll, please. Thank you in the back. 1, they found that the trees close to Pando's center shared more similar mutations than those that were far apart, so like further away. So it's been shuffling and reshuffling its DNA since the beginning to keep itself healthy. And 2, since the beginning, speaking of which, researchers came up with a brand new age range. 16,000 to 80,000 years old. Now, 16,000 to 80,000 is quite the gap, and why there's a broad range, Rosen told Live Science, is that mutations in aspen trees are, quote, rare, and it's not entirely clear how quickly these genetic quirks pile up in new shoots and stems. But sampling of a lake bed near Pando also revealed the continuous presence of aspen pollen over 60,000 years, suggesting that the clone may have been around since the time humans have been migrating out of Africa. End quote. My friends, as DNA analysis and AI sciences progress, more studies will be done on Pando's genetic history, and we'll get even more accurate and wild answers. So watch this space. To begin, I'm going to ask you to gather all you've learned from true crime documentaries and podcasts, a pair of latex powder-free gloves in black, and your fiercest Mariska Hargitay ensemble, and to join me at a fresh crime scene in merry old England. The year is 2022, and we're standing in a delightful garden belonging to the delightful Ann Mathers, an 88-year-old woman who, thanks to her age, has seen some shit. But she's never bore witness to a kind of scene like this before. Not near her home, and certainly not in this historic market town of Dudley, which, for my fellow geographically challenged Americans, is located at the very center of England, and is actually credited with the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. It has a long, long history, and on this day, a bizarre new chapter has just been added. At the top of the show, we learned Anne called her daughter in tears after kneeling down to tend to her flower bed. Within it was part of a human skull. The police came, asked questions, poked around, took the skull, and opened a case. The police, however, had no idea how quickly they'd be frantically asked to return and for how many times. According to Anne's daughter, Lorraine Lloyd, who said in an interview with the BBC, quote, "Since then, she's been having femurs, skulls, the bottom part of a chin, jawbones, you name it, coming into the garden." End quote. So, did Anne have subconscious serial killer tendencies? Did she have a psychotic stalker whose love notes included segments of the human body? Unfortunately, no. For you see, Anne's home and garden are just behind a church, and that church just so happens to have an adjoining cemetery. And that cemetery just so happened to have a few living residents. Continuing from the BBC, quote, Councillor Chaz Salim, cabinet member for the Highways and Public Realm, said that the council had been working with the church to resolve the badger issue. He said the public right-of-way was currently closed due to the situation. Mr. Salim continued, quote, "As badgers are a protected species, we are in the process of obtaining the services of a qualified ecologist to help us further." End quote. The badger issue. Yeah, my friends, I have great news. The culprit, or culprits, are the European badger, the only badger species found in the UK, and this incident of human remains and graves being disturbed by them is not the only one. Join me, will you, now in the year 2021, after 17 months of similar chaos, headlines around the world finally reported on what was happening in a graveyard in Northumberland, a little place called Tweedmouth Cemetery, which is so British. If you picture England and point to the border it shares with Scotland, there in the very far right corner is where we are now. This time, listening in on a distraught conversation between the Daily Mail and Elena Brown, who lives a short walk from the graveyard. The 39-year-old self-described beauty therapist told the online magazine, quote, "The problem has existed for roughly around a year and a half. It's a hard one because nobody wants to harm the badgers and they're protected, but nobody wants our loved ones' burial plots damaged either. There needs to be some consideration for the badgers, but also for the deceased and their families. I know people affected by it. It's a very small town where everybody knows each other. There's one family, in particular, whose relative's grave had been dug and disturbed on 18 out of the last 21 days, which is extremely distressing. I've seen people lying on top of the graves, and people on their knees, which is not really nice at all. But the badgers will continue to increase in numbers." End quote. Well, that is a lot. The visuals of graves being dug up and bones strewn about is disturbing as fuck, and luckily, you don't even have to imagine it. There are official photos provided by the Daily Mail over at our social media stuffs because, yes, of course, I would have them. Now, if you swipe past those photos, you'll see who's behind all of this. And terrible news. They're adorable. My friends, that black and white striped face with the thick black button nose belongs to the UK's largest land predator and one of the most well-known British species. In fact, the site badgertrust.org calls them a living symbol of the British countryside. I'm talking about the European badger. And I think we should learn a little bit more about them and why they're having their way with people's buried bits and bobs. First, their physiology. Clocking in at 30 to 40 inches in length and weighing in up to 26 pounds, that is a lot of power behind a pair of paws that love to dig. Second, they dig for survival. Everything about them is that digging life. They feed on small mammals, birds' eggs, worms, especially earthworms, as they could eat up to several hundred in a night, and they love fruit and plants. But they also dig to create massive homes for massive families. According to wildlifetrust.org, badgers live in large family groups in burrows underground called a set. and they could reach lengths of up to 160 feet. Quote, "You know if a set is lived in as it is usually neat and tidy, with clean doorways, marked with piles of used bedding made up of dry grass and leaves. There will also be a particularly smelly pit nearby that the badgers use as a toilet." End quote. I don't know how, but this is all very English. Anyway, if any animal-loving business goose out there in the UK wants to tempt a few into your garden, the site suggests leaving unsalted peanuts around. But I warn you, they will not leave. Their cubs will not leave, and eventually their cubs will not leave. Elena Brown, the woman who lives a short walk from Tweedmouth Cemetery, she would advise completely against it, in fact. The badger situation there literally exploded to a point where on one single night, her hidden camera spotted 40, that's 40 individual badgers digging through the graveyard. By the time of this interview with the Daily Mail, July of 2021, the problem had become so volatile that not only were the plots destroyed, but the relationship between locals and the Northumberland County Council responsible for Tweedmouth's upkeep. Despite claiming to perform daily checks to repair any needs, Elena begged to differ. No, noting, quote, "3 weeks ago, an old neighbor's husband's grave had 2 distinctive holes on it, and they're still there now, so they can't be checking often." End quote. Well, that doesn't sound great, and I can see the look on your face, my equally naughty business goose. I think you're thinking, that is, it just sucks to hear, but if there's at least 40 badgers badgering, that's hard to keep up with. Can't they be relocated? Like, what's up with that? I am so glad you asked and brought that up. Like most striking furry animals, the badger fell victim to human demand. That was until the Wildlife and Countryside Act of 1981 and the Protection of Badgers Act of 1992, which basically said no touchy-touchy, and it fucking worked. Badgers experienced a 77% increase in numbers during the 80s and 90s, and they rebounded to an estimated 400,000 throughout the UK. So, round of applause. And that's all you can do with your hands in this situation. The council told the Daily Mail, badgers and their sets are legally protected, which makes it difficult to take preventative action to relocate them or stop them digging in an area, with such work only being authorized under specific circumstances requiring a special license from Natural England, end quote. My friends, yeah, you need the receipts, and you need the blessing of Natural England, who, according to their website, gov.uk, help conserve, enhance, and manage the natural environment for the benefit of present and future generations, thereby contributing to sustainable development, end quote. You need to woo this department. And you need to build one hell of a strong case to obtain a license to pick up and move one of England's most beloved, friend-shaped, and protected creatures. And now, I think I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, shit. That's easy. I can't think of a worse problem than the remains of dead people popping up in gardens and like literal shitholes in graveyards. They must have gotten a license, right? Well, first, let me start off by saying you're not the only one who thought that the badger was in the bag. Elena Brown also thought the public would be all for the humane removal of the animals, but her petition over at change.org fell 99 signatures short. Democracy doesn't work. After an entire year of gathering evidence and waiting to speak with Natural England, in 2022, the council finally had its own shot. But just as with Elena, this too left the town empty-handed. From the one and only Northumberland Gazette, quote, "Council officers worked with the ecology experts to carry out survey work in connection with the application to Natural England for a license to relocate the badger sets, but it was turned down. Natural England felt that the exclusion of the badgers and the closure of the 2 active sets would have a significant impact on the badgers and is not considered proportionate to to the level of damage they are currently causing. End quote. Ooh. That is one hell of a blow. It really pulls out your heart, no pun intended. But there is good news. For real, there is good news here. In conjunction with Natural England, the council intends to install a badger-proof fence. Yes. Now, it wasn't noted how deep that fence would go, being that badgers are an exceptional creature at engineering. So the people of Northumberland just had to wait and see if it works. And if it didn't, well, County Councillor Isabel Hunter has a very British plan B of sorts, telling the Gazette, quote, "If that doesn't work, we will then have to go back to Natural England and say, what are you going to come up with next?" End quote. Well, my friends, that was in 2022, and now it's 2024, and I am absolutely thrilled to report that the fence is kind of working, and Isabel might not have to resort to Planish B. A spokesperson for the local authority said in a statement, quote, "Following consultation with ecologists and Natural England about the situation at the cemetery, a badger-proof fence was installed along a range of other actions to minimize the impact of the badger's activity, which was understandably causing distress to visitors. The council continues to inspect the cemetery regularly, and we are pleased to say that the measures appear to be working." The badgers are still in their sets, but the range of measures put in place is minimizing the damage done across the cemetery, and the fencing appears to be keeping them away from the section where previously they were causing the most damage. End quote. Well, that's great fucking news. Not only for the safety of the badgers and the people of Northumberland, but for the people who live by the churchyard at Jedburgh Abbey. Because yes, my whimsical business goose, it has happened again. Just this past August, police were called to the churchyard at Jedburgh Abbey in Scotland, after bones were discovered around several graves. The local Scottish Borders Council said it was working with the Historic Environment Scotland, the HES, to monitor animal activity and confirm if badgers were responsible, which, spoiler, I think they are. I think the Northumberland Council can provide a few tips and tricks, like keep calm and build a badger-proof fence. After the break, holy shit, did you know? Honeybees, bears, chickens, and even salamanders have been shown to have some form of numerical skill. Rhesus monkeys, for example, can count up to 6. We humans are not alone when it comes to counting, and now we have a new member of this exclusive club. Stay tuned.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
Looking for a pickup truck to get just about anything done? Look no further. The Chevy Silverado EV isn't just the most powerful Silverado ever, with next-level towing capability and technology. It also offers game-changing versatility with the available multi-flex midgate and tailgate, which means Silverado EV helps you carry large, bulky, and oddly shaped items up to nearly 11 feet in length. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Visit Chevrolet.com to learn more.
And we're back. We are so back. And my friends, you're about to know more than you ever wanted to about the mating and development of zebrafish. But stick with me. You'll want to hear this, not only because it's so alien to our world, but it plays a fascinating key role in the study we're about to get into. First, I'd like you to imagine a fish tank. Just a fish tank. Fabulous. Now, if you will, add a sliding bottom insert so that it reduces the depth of the water to simulate the shore of a river. And if you would, dim the lights so that the ambiance resembles that of sunrise. Now, I'm asking you to do this because this setting, a shoreline and the early morning, is where and when zebrafish get romantic. Zebrafish spawn best in the morning due to their circadian rhythms, and this setup is so successful, researchers have been able to collect 10,000 embryos in 10 minutes using this method. That is a lot of amor, and that is not even the craziest part. My friends, when females release their eggs, embryonic development has already begun. When sperm shows up and fertilization is a success, a zebrafish embryo develops rapidly. And when I say rapidly, I really mean it. Precursors to all major organs appear within 36 hours. That's just a day and a half later. And if you divide up those 36 hours, the milestones appear within minutes. And I have the photos to prove it. If you head on over to our social media stuffs and tap on today's post, swipe through all those adorable and macabre photos of badgers, and you'll see a collage of 9 boxes. Let's take a look at each, shall we? Box 1. The embryo begins as a yolk with a single enormous cell on top, kind of like a hat. And in boxes 2, 3, and 4, you'll see that in a mere 3 hours, it divides into 2 cells and continues dividing until there are thousands of small cells. The cells then migrate down the sides of the yolk within 8 hours, and they begin forming a head and a tail within 16 hours. The tail then grows and separates from the body within 24 hours. And these are boxes 5, 6, and 7. After 72 hours, that's 3 days, that right there is a translucent zebrafish, yet to fully mature. But my friends, that's a full-ass fish in 3 days, and that's box 8. And guess what? This is going to get even crazier. My friends, join me, will you, at the University of Ferrara, Italy, where Tyrone Musange-Secato, an animal behavior and animal cognition researcher at the Department of Life Sciences and Biotechnology, and his fellow fish-loving team had some ideas. Quote, "We were interested in studying the development of numerical abilities," he told newscientist.com. "We especially wanted to focus on the really early undeveloped brain to see if this numerical capacity is something that is somehow intrinsic." End quote. Jesus. I can see the expression on your face from here. It says, Jesus, how in the holy fuck are you going to do that? Great question. Enter the incredible zebrafish. My friends, your fish tank has come to life. Tyrone and the gang bred zebrafish larvae in a fish tank that also had the added accessory of black vertical bars painted on all sides. After 3 days, when the zebrafish became nearly fully fledged zebrafish, there they remained in the tank for 4 additional days. So technically they were 4-day-old fish swimming around in their striped little tank. On that day, they were moved to a second tank, and this one was a little different. 2 sides of this tank had differing numbers of vertical bars painted on, ranging from 1 bar to 4, and the other sides were blank. My friends, get this. Within the first 6 minutes, the behavior of the fish was apparent. Repeating this experiment over and over with a total of 360 zebrafish larvae, the researchers saw that the fish spent close to twice the amount of time near the side with the larger number of bars compared to the other side. And it's believed that they did this because it resembled the environment of the first tank where they developed. It looked like home. Are you crying? Yeah, me too, and so is Tyrone. Quote, "We were expecting them to select the area with more bars because it is similar to their early environment," he said to Jason Arun Murugesu, to Jason of New Scientist. Now, after drying your tears, you may be asking, what the fuck does all of this mean exactly? Great question. The team's study noted that while this result does not exclude the larva delete. Let's try that again. The team's study noted, while this result does not exclude that larvae can also process continuous quantities, it indicated that they used and prioritized numerical information in this context, end quote. AKA, that's a fancy way of saying, they counted. And they did so only 4 days after forming. 4 days. It is so impressive that the title of the study said it all. Quantity discrimination in newly hatched zebrafish suggests hardwired They can count, I can't read. AKA, they counted, and they did so only 4 days after forming. I'm going to read slower. It's so damn impressive that the title of the study said it all. Quantity discrimination in newly hatched zebrafish suggests hardwired numerical abilities. My friends, this opens up the door to things like understanding learning disabilities in humans, to finding the mechanisms for quantity cognition in different parts of the animal kingdom. This is all new and it has just begun. Once again, this little 2-inch fish just keeps on giving. Thank you for listening, rating, subscribing, telling your friends. Tell your friends about the robbing badgers. Just leave bones in front of people's homes and gardens, and it's just their way. That's just what they do. Tell them about the fish that can count. It's going to be an awkward conversation. Put them together in the same conversation, out of context. And a tinsely thanks to the folks over at Airwave Media, the podcast network to which WTI belongs. If you love the show, and you do, you love the other podcasts in this family. And please, stay interesting.